Hi, I'm Kevin Hale, a pediatric dentist and the director of the Points of Light Project. Points of Light endeavors to improve children's health and oral health by connecting children with dentists, particularly infants. Diet and nutritional counseling is a primary component of preventive oral health. With infants, there are subtle yet significant considerations regarding healthy development. Therefore, we are here to discuss infant and toddler nutrition. With me today are registered dietitian and nutritionist Ms. Peggy Crum, Dr. Penny Ballmeyer, pediatrician, and Ms. Tanya Reinhardt, registered dietitian, nutritionist. Tanya, what are the important things parents can do to establish healthy eating habits that may prevent chronic diseases into adulthood?
I think one of the most important things that parents can do is to always remember that they're a role model for what their children see and what they later may imitate. And this especially in regards to not just the foods that they eat, that they prefer, that they choose on a daily basis, but also their eating habits, how much snacking they do they sit at the table, at mealtime. So that's an important concept. And I think it's even more important when children are very young, and we kind of overlook that. We think, oh, this is a 7-month-old or 8-month-old, they're not really paying attention, but they're always watching. So I think that's key. The next thing I think is, as relates to chronic disease, looking at, for example, obesity seems to tie into so many chronic diseases these days. For example, type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So we have a fixed number of calories, each of us, that we can work with on a daily basis if we don't want to gain weight. Well, we need to maximize those calories. So this concept is called nutrient density. That means that when you pick foods, select those that give you the most bang for your buck. The highest level of essential nutrients, and also those healthy compounds that we read about in the newspaper, like lycopene, that offer some health advantage relative to these chronic diseases. It's kind of the idea that if you were going to go to the store, you would want to maximize how much you could get for your dollar, because most of us don't have extra money sitting around. So when we go to buy something, we want the best product for the least cost. Same thing with foods. Choose foods most of the time that give you the most nutrients for the least amount of calories, and that's what nutrient dense refers to.
Penny, did you want to add to that?
I did. I think the concept of being a role model is imperative. Recently, I had a family in the office, and it was a 1-year-old, and we were talking about introductions of foods and giving examples of what they might feed the child. And I said to the mother, well, what will you be having for dinner this evening? She goes, I don't know. I don't know, I haven't thought about it. Now this is 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and she went on to say to me, we eat out most of the time. And I said, well, what do you eat? Well, do we pick up Chinese or pizza? That right there is an example of role modeling. They're not taking the time to plan out meals and snacks. And this is what our children are seeing. And to me, this is where we're getting into the problem with obesity and chronic illnesses. People aren't taking the time to plan out meals and be good examples for their children.
When you talk about getting the most bang for your buck, I think what we need to look for in the supermarket are things that are colorful. And so if you look for a variety of colors, a variety of textures, a variety of tastes, then you're probably going to get a good amount of nutrients on the table. But there's one other really key element to a meal, and that is pleasure. So if you're role modeling, then you want to show your child that you're really truly enjoying what you're eating. And they're more likely to try it too. We look at children in various cultures in the world, and we say, well, why is it that that child will eat something like tofu and really look like they're loving it, when my child wouldn't think of eating tofu? I mean, I've tried it. I don't really know what to do with it. But that's cultural. So when we think about what we put on the table, if we put a wide variety of things, and that's where when you eat out, you're not going to get a wide variety of things. And you also, as a parent, lose a lot of the, I don't want to say control, but support, the supportive role, when you're apt to pick off the children's menu, so it's macaroni and cheese or things like that, and you don't really have that nice variety that you would have in a family meal. There's nothing wrong with it on an occasional basis.
Peggy, what can a parent do to foster a preference for fruits and vegetables?
Well, it goes back to modeling behavior again. And in this regard, I think you have to remember that everyone, young children included, eat with their eyes first. So if you have a variety of things on the table that your child is choosing from, and that looks pretty, it looks interesting, they see mommy or daddy eating those foods and enjoying those foods. I think we have to remember that children pick up on your emotions very quickly and model that. So if you look like you're enjoying the steamed broccoli, they're going to want to try the steamed broccoli. And that's really important. And they will then eat more variety of the foods that just like you eat. A parent's job, as far as I'm concerned, a parent's responsibility with feeding is to provide the food. Now that seems very basic, but once you've provided the food, you've put it out on the table, and the child shows interest, you put it on their plate. Then once they're a little bit older, they put it on their own plate. And then they're more willing to try it because you haven't come into their territory. But the parent's responsibility of providing the food, making sure that everyone's gathered around the table at a certain time. So you've in that division of responsibility, which is, this whole concept comes from Ellen Satter. And she defined the parent's responsibility, the child's responsibility in eating. And once you've put that food on the table, then you should sit back and relax and enjoy your own meal, because now you're the role model. And then your child will be able to eat the right foods because you provided them, and the right amounts of foods. So just sit back and relax and enjoy.
Tanya, you were shaking your head. Do you want to add something?
Well, I thought it was actually nodding, but yeah, I saw some interesting studies about breastfeeding and fruit and vegetable intake. Now, granted, I think it was one study, but it had indicated that maybe there was a link between breastfeeding and, of course, consuming fruits and veggies while you're breastfeeding, and then later, infants and children being more tolerant of fruits and veggies and being willing to have fruits and vegetables. And it may have something to do with, certain things from the fruits and vegetables leaching into the breast milk, and so the baby is tasting it as he's having his breast milk.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Kevin, I want to add, I think families aren't offering a large variety. When I talk to families, they tend to eat the same vegetable or the same fruit over and over again. I ask children, who knows what a kumquat is? Nobody even knows or a pomegranate, or avocado. People don't reach out and try these variety of foods. They get stuck in a rut, with the banana or the grape or the strawberry. Same with vegetables. And when people go out to eat, often you don't even get the option of getting a vegetable with your meal. You get a potato in place of that. So I still think children are having the opportunity to try varieties. I think the other thing that's happening is, because of that, people aren't aware of how to purchase fruits and vegetables correctly. I'm going to laugh and tell you this story. I recently wrote the nutrition program, Fit by Choice, that we've been teaching in our office. And we do a big section the first week on fruits, the second week on vegetables. I haven't tried many of these fruits that I was talking to people about, and so that's been interesting. I had to go to the store and learn how to buy these things. I'm not even purchasing my pears correctly and leaving them to ripen correctly. So sometimes when I go to eat it, I go, I'm not going to buy pears because I can never seem to get it the right ripeness. I'm wasting money. And the reality is I'm not keeping it, storing it correctly. And so that's really one of our goals, is to teach people better nutrition so that they're more likely to try things and purchase things.
Tanya, what should a parent do with a picky eater, a child who won't eat vegetables at all?
Well, I think one of the first things is for the parent to not get too excited about it. It is so common. I know Peggy was talking about how in her practice that's the biggest problem. And it's cross-cultural. You know, I mean, all kids do this around the world. And it does tend to resolve by a certain age, from what I understand. So that can help the parent not get too agitated. The child probably won't starve. The second thing I would say is, again, not to beat the dead horse, but remember that you're the role model. You know, if you're kind of picky and choosy and you won't eat things that people offer to you when you perhaps go out, or then, you know, your child picks up on that too. So again, the role model concept. But my last idea is, and Peggy may disagree, Penny too, I like the stealth approach for that time being when they truly are just in their ultimate pickiness. So what I mean by the stealth approach is that some of the nutrients that you obtain from vegetables, because that's usually what kids reject, you can get these in fruits, and especially nutrient-dense fruits. When I look at a cantaloupe, you know, you're getting vitamin A, vitamin C, folate. Well, those are the nutrients typically that you would get in a green vegetable. So it's not to say you don't need vegetables, but it's to say this can allay some of their concerns. So pick some of those fruits that they like that are nutrient dense. And then the other thing they can do is they can kind of hide the veggies in products. I don't think you'll find any child who can find little tiny chopped up bits of carrots in their chili, or even pureed carrots in their spaghetti sauce. And those are foods that kids typically will accept. And there are a lot of those little kinds of tips.
Well, I think parents need to take a step back and look at what happened before they came to the table for the meal. And there are any food or beverage that has a caloric value will interfere with that child's natural interest in eating. So what we want our children to do, coming to the table, is to be hungry, because that will decrease their pickiness just by the very nature of hunger. It makes you seek out food. And so they're much more willing to try what you have on the table when they have a desire to eat. So, so just as an example, if the child has a sippy cup, and probably a dentist's nightmare, right? Mm-hmm. Or a bottle that has any kind of even nutritious beverage like milk or juice, that will dampen the appetite or the drive to eat. And they come to the table not really all that hungry, and so they become picky. The other thing, and maybe you'd want to address that, is just the nature of children's growth, where that period of time in early toddlerhood where they're not growing as rapidly, they just don't need as much food. And so you may see them turning down things that they've eaten before and say, oh no, they're picky, when really they're just not growing very fast. And so they don't need as much food and therefore aren't eating the things that you put on the table.
I agree with that. We spend a lot of time talking about the volume of food that children need. Americans just overconsume, hence we have obesity. So I spend a great deal of time talking about that very issue. Parents are what's the word I want there? Obsessed with did their child eat a meal. In reality, kids are very smart. They eat when they're hungry, and they don't eat if they're not hungry. Mm-hmm. Unlike you and I, if it's lunchtime, we simply eat even if we're not hungry. And we have to allow children to stop eating or not eat if they're not hungry, and to stop obesity.